Hi, my name is Faisal Salem. Today, I'm going to talk about NetApp Flexgroups, how we at NetApp IT deployed Flexgroups in our environment, some of the benefits that the Flexgroup technology offers when compared to FlexVol volumes. Okay, I'll start off with a brief explanation about myself and my organization. I'm a senior storage engineer with NetApp IT. I've been with NetApp for a little over 6 years. During most of that time, I've worked as the storage technical lead, and I since moved into engineering. I'm currently responsible for new storage deployments, mostly ONTAP, Adaptive QoS, Active IQ, and my favorite, that's FlexGroups. Let me talk a little bit about Customer-1. It's an organization within NetApp that uses our own products in-house, and we provide feedback to the product teams. What we also do is we share use cases and how we deploy these products in-house, and that pretty much helps the customers and partners to deploy it in their environment and take benefit of the use cases that we offer. To give an explanation about our environment, NetApp is a large organization with more than 10,000 employees. We have offices in over 45 countries. As part of our Customer-1 program, we have what we call an early adoption environment, where we deploy pre-release ONTAP software. Now, all of that started when we were approached by the ONTAP QA testing team. They told us, hey, we have pre-RC code that we would like you to deploy because we cannot generate real world workloads like you do. Obviously, we said yes. And as an outcome of the Customer-1 program, we have contributed to more than 100 BERTs. And this has helped improve product quality. And what happens is the product teams go in and fix the issues that we hit before the code goes GA and it gets downloaded by an external customer. Now, we have about 66 petabytes of storage and 400 storage controllers, nearly 6,000 servers as of today. Talking about enterprise applications, we have 375 applications, of which a little over 100 are hosted in the cloud, Amazon or Microsoft Azure. We also have 50 SaaS applications, taking an example of Office 365, and the rest are on-prem. Now, in the future, however, what we aim to do is have more than 160 SaaS applications. And what we'll also do is have applications in our private cloud environment, which is deployed using a mix of HCI, all-flash FAS, and storage grid. So that's kind of like a sneak peek into the future. On this slide, I'm going to provide an overview of what a NetApp Flexgroup volume is all about. What it is a scale-out NAS container that provides a high performance along with automatic load distribution, and of course, the extreme scalability that it offers. Now, the benefit of a Flexgroup volume is it looks and feels exactly like a normal FlexVol volume, and that's advantageous to the administrator, like the Unix or the storage admin that connects to it. He can continue to operate as he's using a normal FlexVol. Probably the only time that he would realize that he's using a Flexgroup is if he took a look at the number of files and the sheer size of that container. Talking about performance, the Flexgroup is able to achieve a very high throughput and a predictable low latency. And it does this by adding concurrency to workloads, which a single FlexVol was incapable of doing. Now, when we talk about a FlexVol, it's attached to a single CPU thread, and that has a limitation of having serial operations. So if you have a lot of read and write options, that's going to get queued up and processed serially. But with FlexGroups, we introduce parallelization where we can talk to all the different member volumes at the same time, and that helps improve throughput and also improve performance in general. So, for example, if I have an 8-node cluster and I deployed a Flexgroup with members on all these nodes, ONTAP essentially is going to use the computing power of all the 8 nodes in parallel. So with FlexVols hold a max of 2 billion inodes, whereas the FlexGroup has been tested to do 400 billion. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is the serial processing of NAS metadata operations. So with FlexVols, you have a single affinity or a single CPU thread that a volume attaches itself to. Now, the downside to that is, you're limited in throughput, and you cannot have parallel operations, right? Everything is queued up, and it only gets processed serially, which means applications that have large number of files being ingested, now they will have a performance penalty if they continue to use FlexVol volumes. Now, uh, going over to the FlexGroup volume, it solves this problem by automatically balancing workloads across all the member volumes that it consists of. And thereby, it introduces a parallelization of workloads, which in turn implies that your throughput improves, your latency goes down, and you can actually scale transparently to the application. So that's some of the differences between FlexVols and FlexGroup volumes. Any questions? Okay. Right. I'd like to shed some light on the ActiveIQ. Right. I wanted to talk about what this application is all about and how we, Customer-1, are leveraging some of the benefits of ActiveIQ. More importantly, the reason I'm talking about it is because our first FlexGroup deployment, or rather the only FlexGroup deployment, was specifically for NetApp ActiveIQ. Right. So what is NetApp ActiveIQ? It enables one to identify risks in your data infrastructure and proactively identify and prevent problems before they actually affect your business. How do you access it? You can go to activeiq.netapp.com, or you could also download the mobile app for insights on the go. So here I've included a snippet on the slide. So if you look at it, that's the dashboard, right? So on the top left corner, you kind of see how many high risks the customer environment is actually reporting. And those high risks could be some that cause disruption and need to be looked into as soon as possible. We've actually averted several outages or bugs just because we use ActiveIQ very extensively. So that's just one feature of ActiveIQ where you can see the high risks. What you can also see is there's a health trending on the same dashboard where you can see the other risk types like medium, low impact, and you also have best practices. And the way it reports all this is by looking at the most recent order supports that these systems have sent to ActiveIQ. There's also historical performance metrics that you can view, CPU, IOPS, throughput, etc. You could also use ActiveIQ to generate upgrade advisor. Maybe you could do some forecasting for the customer storage requirements. There's also a way to view the current storage efficiency and get recommendations on how you can optimize the different efficiency parameters that's currently set and how NetApp would recommend that it be. So it's got a lot of features, and this is something that we extensively use. There's a reporting portal. If you look on top left, there is a My Reports. So if you went in, you could actually schedule a weekly report with the high risks and get it delivered via email. And if you have an operations team that want to look at it, create cases, go about fixing it, that will really ensure that your storage environment in general stays healthy and have very low risks that it reports at any point in time. Now, how does ActiveIQ do all this, right? So like I mentioned, it relies on the auto supports that are sent from the storage systems on the field. So ActiveIQ receives 200 billion data points from 300,000 NetApp assets across the globe. And all this data, it goes into a 4 petabyte data lake, right? And it's that huge because it has 20 years of data. They almost never purge stuff. So their data lake today is much more than 4 petabytes, and it's got over 20 years of data. And every week, the ActiveIQ system, it generates more than 100 terabytes of data and over 200 million files. So it's massive, right? It's like no other application that at least we have in our environment. So let me go to the next slide. So there were definitely, and there obviously was a data ingestion problem that we were kind of running into. And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we faced because of the huge, enormous data sets that we had to process from ActiveIQ. So what we found is the NFS volumes that ActiveIQ uses, they were normal FlexVol volumes, and they would constantly hit the 2 billion inode limit. And one of the options obviously was to provision a new volume every time this happened, right? So what we ended up doing is every 2 to 3 weeks, we had to carve out new volumes, which then had to be mounted on hundreds of ActiveIQ servers, right? This was a lot of effort, a lot of change management, a lot of RFCs that had to be approved and implemented month on month. It also required the application services to be validated. And most important of all, there was a downtime we had to take every time we did the change, which the application team wasn't very happy about. So we started, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. It took like 24 hours of change, right? Every time we had to provision new volumes, we had a 24-hour of change that we had to go through. And that also includes all the inode alert tickets and the volume alert tickets that the L2 teams had to work on, right? So a lot of man hours spent on managing just the ActiveIQ environment and the volumes.
Just a quick question around like FlexGroup adoption in general and what you guys see on the field as well. I mean, are we kind of saying like we're going to start for most NAS workloads, we're going to kind of standardize on FlexGroups, or like is it going to be a case where it's a use case thing? Or because I'm just reading between the lines, seems like FlexGroups is pretty good for most things then today, right? Or is there specific areas where FlexGroups might not be a good fit? Or any sort of comment on that?
Right, you're correct in that there are specific use cases where FlexGroups works better than others. Now you could deploy it in almost any NAS environment. However, for getting the performance that what NetApp recommends and we kind of guarantee, there are specific use cases that we've tested. In our environment, for example, we're looking at a flat file. Let me go back to this slide. So this is kind of the directory structure that we've tested and we're using with ActiveIQ, right? It's a flat file structure with like millions of files. But the important thing is each file would be around like 5 megabytes in size. So small sized files, but like large amounts of them. If we were to do huge files, that would probably impact performance or result in like a non-uniform performance across the FlexGroup volume. So yes, there are specific use cases where FlexGroups would be better suited than others.
For sure, perfect. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so I will go to the next slide. Right. So we spoke about the challenges that we had operationally and the limitations of using the FlexVol volume. Now, how did we solve it, right? So we figured the only way we could kind of solve this data ingestion problem is if we had a large container that could go beyond the limitations that FlexVols have today, which is the 100 terabyte size and the 2 billion inode count. Although there were other options, from a performance standpoint, and what was best suited for ActiveIQ, we did a POC of the FlexGroup solution, and then we figured that that's the way to go. So what we did is we deployed a 4-node fast 9000 cluster, and gave it, a pretty decent, a good networking infrastructure. As you can see, we have 2 into 40 gig Ethernet cards that we use for the interconnects, which implies that we have an 80 gig pipe for the interconnects, and we have 80 gig pipe for all the NAS traffic to the client. What we then did is we deployed 2 FlexGroups. The reason we did 2 is more an application requirement than anything else. They wanted 2 FlexGroups of 600 terabytes each, 24 constituents, and we maxed out the file count to 48 billion per FlexGroup. Talking about the networking, because we wanted to, utilize the full potential of the FlexGroup, we deployed a data lift per node, which was like 4 data lifts in total, bundle that into a single DNS record, right? So we use this round robin DNS record. Each time a client unmounts and mounts, they're going to get a new IP address. And that way, we kind of aggregated the throughput, and we're also able to balance out the load more evenly across all the nodes. What we also did is we turned on all the volume efficiency features, dedupe compression, and data compaction. So what were the results, right? So what we observed is after we deployed FlexGroups, there was a 15 to 20% reduction in the overall data processing time. Now, this is the time from when ActiveIQ ingests data to the time we actually store it on disk, right? So we kind of measured it using multiple tools on the application side, and we use Grafana OCI. So we noticed a significant reduction in the total processing time. What it also helped is in eliminating like 290 man hours annually in reactive IT ops support. So like I mentioned earlier, we had to do changes every month, and all that added up to a huge amount of effort from the L2 teams, and it eliminated all of that just by deploying FlexGroups, right? Now, talking about performance, we saw a 2-time better improvement in performance, specifically in terms of IOPS, 10% more throughput, as well as the total average latency also went down significantly. Now, the alert tickets, right? Like I mentioned, the ops teams used to get 80 alert tickets a month. Now it's dropped down to 0, and that was a big win for us. What we also did is by implementing all the ONTAP efficiency features like dedupe, compression, and compaction. When I checked an hour back, right, the logical size that it currently occupies is 6.6 petabytes, but the physical size is only 1.2 petabytes, right? So it's like a 5:1 ratio of the logical to the physical data size. So those are some of the space-saving, performance, operational benefits that we as IT got because of deploying FlexGroups. Any questions on this slide?
Faisal, there is a question in the chat window. Adrian wants to know, are there any implications for snap mirroring from one site to another within FlexGroups? And can you do mix and match, or can you only mirror to and from FlexGroup setups? Or can you migrate from existing Flex volume setups to the FlexGroup setups?
Yes. So let me take the last bit first, where can we migrate from a FlexVol to a FlexGroup? Yes, we can. The recommended way is to use XCP. It's known to be multi-threaded and be very efficient in migrating. It's not just from FlexVol to FlexGroups, You could also migrate from pretty much any other storage, right? Any other storage vendor's system onto a FlexGroup if we used XCP. So that's the recommended and the documented way for moving data into a FlexGroup. Snap mirroring, we can, although we have not deployed it, but yes, we can definitely deploy Snap Mirror along with FlexGroups. Yeah, this, that, okay, thank you. All right.
Hey, Faisal, I wanted to add something. This is Eduardo. I was going to answer the question in the chat too, but yeah, you're right. So Snap Mirror just has to be FlexGroup to FlexGroup, and there's a document that talks about things to consider. So I'll post it in the chat. In terms of conversion, I think so Faisal talked about using XCP, which is really copying data from one place to the other using an intermediary host. I do believe that in the future roadmap, there's talks about doing conversions from FlexVol to FlexGroup, but that's not yet available. I think that's something to look into the future. But today, yeah, the right method is to use something like XCP to copy data from one source to the other.
Cool. Thanks, Eduardo.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, just to ask one more question about what Eduardo just mentioned there. So will that so in terms of converting that FlexVol to FlexGroup, and I know this is a roadmap thing, but is that going to be online, or how are they going to do that? Is that going to be an online migration kind of thing, or?
I don't know, to be honest with you. That's something that we need to talk to the product team about. If you talk to Justin Parisi, he probably can tell you more information, because I've seen threads online with him when they're asking the same question. He's talking about this a future roadmap deliverable, but I couldn't tell you the specifics at this point.
No issues. Thank you, Eduardo. Cheers.
Cool. Okay. On this slide, I want to talk about how we can expand the FlexGroup. So what we ended up doing, when we moved over from FlexVols to FlexGroups, is with FlexVols we had to rotate volumes every 3 weeks, and with FlexGroups we kind of do it like once a year. So we did recently have to do that, and the way we expanded it is, I think there's a question. Yeah, Eduardo. So the way we did that is we added 4 Fast 9000 nodes, which is the same model and the same number of nodes that we initially deployed. And it's recommended to kind of symmetric when you add new nodes from a performance standpoint. So we followed a couple of steps to ensure it was seamless and non-impacting in any way to the application. So we moved the member volumes to the newly added nodes. And the way we did it is to kind of ensure that all the nodes, once all the moves were done, all nodes would have the same number of volumes, right? The same number of member volumes. And once that was done, we added the same number of new member volumes to all the nodes, and thereby we brought the FlexGroups to their new sizes of 1.6 petabytes and total number of member FlexVols of 56. And the max file count today is 114 billion. So we could technically go up to 400 billion. So probably we could expand it a couple of more times before we hit the max. So what's important to note is, when we expand a FlexGroup volume, there is absolutely no impact, and it's transparent to the application that they can just continue doing about their stuff. And in the background, the storage team is going to add new nodes, carve out those new aggregates, expand the FlexGroup, and once it's done, you just figure out that, hey, we just expanded the container, and we're just good to go. So that's about all I had. Let me just stop here and take some more questions.
If no questions, like I said, I'll throw something out there. Have you guys on the field seen adoption of FlexGroups, or like, I guess, questions about customers about how this is supposed to work? Like, what do you see use cases in your different accounts where this stuff may work? Well, I guess I'll provide some more perspective. So Faisal did a really good job of presenting like your use case and how we implemented it. And again, from our perspective, we're just a user of the technology, right? We're just another customer. But earlier on there was a question about like, well, are we going to see everything going to FlexGroups? And I don't think so. I think that they fill different use cases. But certainly, what we started to see, we deployed FlexGroup in this particular use case, and it worked to resolve their issues of scalability, right, in terms of capacity, and also simplicity from the user end perspective, where they come on the one mount point and they have this massive data store. But as we deployed that one, we started like identifying, and we haven't done anything about it yet, but we identified a couple other use cases. We're like, oh, that looks like a FlexGroup use case, and those are not only those use cases are not just about capacity, but they're also about, for example, file count, right? We have some areas where we create a whole bunch of files and links and whatnot, and it just becomes we hit the limits of max files on single flex vaults. And even though the capacity is not large, the capacity needs are not large, FlexGroup will help us kind of like go beyond those file limitations or number of files in some of the cases. It also helps, and Faisal talked a little bit about this, in the case of even this one, the ingestion, it also helps like kind of like distribute the load right across multiple nodes. So when we created the FlexGroup and we exposed it to the nodes, we actually created a round robin DNS entry for all the lifts that make up, I guess, the lifts and all the different nodes that exist. And when they mount it, they kind of randomly mount them, right, depending on how you get that DNS record. And what ends up happening is that we have different clients, or all the hundreds of servers are mounted as single mount point, are just writing to different nodes at the same time. So it kind of spreads out the load that way too. So there's a few use cases where FlexGroups become attractive, right? One is like scale and capacity, scale and files, and really load sharing across the nodes themselves. So as we get more experience with this, we get more and more I guess examples that we see in our environment.
There's another question on the chat from Adrian. It is the question I asked Faisal the other day, actually, very similar. Is it in the roadmap that FlexGroup will be the default normal shipped config, or will it have to be configured each time?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question for the pro team, but I don't know. I know that over the past, many iterations of ONTAP, and I think they started its life as what they call infinite volume, right? And that we've kind of abandoned that now, transforming to FlexGroups. But what I've seen in the past few iterations is that they make it more and more look and feel like a volume, in the sense like, there's more tooling around it, right? It's easy to create now. It has the same properties that you can snapshot and mirror and that kind of stuff. So whether or not it's going to be a default, that's I don't know. I don't know if that's something that they're looking to do. But I do think it's going to become, a lot more commonplace, right?
I have one last poll question for everyone before we sign off today. This is just basically to gauge your interest in other topics we could bring forward in future webinars. So if you have a moment and you can see the poll, go ahead and respond.
Wow, it's very varied.
It is. Well, that's good. We like variety.
As we move forward, we've done a few of these already with different people from my team and different things that we've been deploying. But we want to take some direction from the team. What else do you guys want to hear about?
Okay. Let me end this and share what I do know. So several people on our DevOps platform, HCI adoption, adaptive QoS, storage grid. So it is a little bit across the board, a little bit about cloud volumes. So again, if of any of these subjects, if you were only able to vote for one, please let Elias know, like, hey, I'm also interested in, and list out the other subjects.
Thank you very much, Mary Jo, Faisal, and Eduardo for putting up this webinar.